Welcome, everybody. This is Sia Nejad Sports. We are back coming off an amazing show with Rick Gaiman. Hopefully you caught that. But I've got today a personal friend of mine, and I'm just so excited he found the time. He's super, super busy, found the time to come onto the show. Most of you know him as Chris Cody, AKA I think maybe they dropped the Fat Chris thing. Chris, I'm not really sure, but let's go with Chris Cody, __ Chris Cody on Twitter and on Instagram. Good friend of mine. Chris, how you doing? Thank you for finding the time to come onto the show.
Dude, who would have thought when we worked together, and we can get into how we work together.
We will.
It feels like 8 years ago, but I think at this point it's like 12 or 14 years ago. Who would have thought? I remember me, you, and my dad played golf when I was working. We were working together at a law firm. Who would have thought, and trust me, you were the lawyer, I was not. Who would have thought that me and you, who would have thought that like 10 years from now, me and my dad would like have a podcast together and stuff like that? Would you ever have thought that with us too?
It's so, not, well, first of all, I'm not even sure I would have conceived of, because back then we're talking like 2007 when I joined what was your mother's firm, who still works at this firm in downtown Fort Lauderdale. You know, Greg was still writing his column. You know, he was doing some stuff with the internet, but it was like chat boards and stuff like that.
Pre-podcasting. That was pre-podcasting.
It was pre-podcasting. So the idea of him actually even being on the podcast or the show was one thing, but then for you to kind of graduate to the show, and we're going to talk about just sort of the beginning and the middle and where you are now with the Batard show. But it's interesting too, Chris, because from your perspective, you know, you were asking the question, could you ever imagine, you know, me and my dad being, you know, this integral part of this huge sports show? But, you know, I wonder what you think of me in this current spot that I'm in, because the reality is,
could I have imagined it with you? It's funny.
Well, it's not even just that, though, because, you know, I was the guy at this big law firm that was kind of, I don't want to say I was like a jokester or anything, but I never really took anything super seriously as it related to the law. I was the guy kind of chucking the football around the office, kind of annoying people and whatnot. And I wonder if looking at that, it actually makes sense that I'm here now.
Well, I think we connected, right? Because I was doing that job and it wasn't really what I was passionate about. And you were doing that job at a higher spot in this, like, obviously you were an attorney, I was working in office services, but we were both working for a law firm and neither of us really wanted to be working for a law firm. And you had a much successful, more high paying job. So it's more interesting that you were just like, I'm doing well here. Cause I remember my mom was your boss and she like, you were like, yeah, like he's great. But she would almost even say to you, like, yeah, it's just clear that this isn't his real passion. He could poop out and be a good attorney. You know what I mean? He doesn't really care about this, but, it was just like, it's interesting that we were there because maybe that's how we connected over like our fantasy teams and just kind of like going to lunch and shooting the shit. Cause we both were kind of like, we're doing this job, but it's like, this is not really what either of us want to be doing.
We were doing bits before we even realized we were doing bits. You would walk into my office and we would talk about the pros and cons of Cheez-Its and other other snacks. And we'd sit there and talk, and Michael would come in as well, your brother. And we'd sit there and talk about it for like 30 minutes. And then your mom would walk in and be like,
what are you guys talking about?
You're supposed to be, you know, practicing law. Yeah. So
we were either doing bits or like working on like little mini basketball, like shooting shots on mini basketball hoops while like everyone else was working.
There isn't. So some people that are watching now, and I thank you for being in the chat, everybody. I see you, Ty and Joe, the goods dude. Thank you for being in here. Hit the like button if you can. But you know, that basketball shot that you're referencing, of all my basketball shots.
Yeah, I've seen it on the internet.
Well, see, I mean, here's the thing. I have a lot of like kind of like cool looking basketball shots. I made the 2 3/4 court shots in a row and done all like whatever. It's that shot, the Nerf shot with the rolled up piece of paper, that is by far my best shot, and it's not even close. In fact, I got to post that sometime out right after this show, because
I believe that's on my phone, by the way. I think I set the phone up and sent you the video and stuff.
And I didn't even know you were filming, so that was super cool. But let me stop right there. Let's go to your transition from Kubicki Draper, the law firm, to the Dan Le Batard show, because what's really interesting. So for those of you that are new to this show is truly, it's not just like an interview. It's truly about kind of motivating people and giving them the right tools and habits to maybe get to the next level. And if you've watched previous shows, you've seen Prince Amukamara was recently on here, Rick Gaiman. We've had the coach Rules has been on here.
Granu.
Negreanu,
That was a good,
Daniel
that
Negreanu.
was
How
a
do I
good
forget
get,
that?
man. I was like, that was a good get.
It was a great get. And Pamela Maldonado, who has also been a guest on this show, who's with Yahoo Sports, she helped me, obviously. She was integral in getting Daniel Negreanu. But we've had amazing, David Meltzer's been on here. There's Greg Ducharme, so many great people. But the point is, threaded throughout all these shows, Chris, is just, trying to motivate people to maybe take that next step. And even if you're not goal-oriented, maybe to create some orientation of goals so that maybe you can kind of just get out of whatever slumber you may or may not be in. And so I don't want to sit here and do this like motivational 30 minutes with you. That's just not what my intention is. But I think through kind of telling your story, we can kind of learn a little bit about you and maybe apply some of those things to our own lives. I know I'm still chasing a lot of goals, Chris, and I'm sure when you joined the Dan Le Batard show, I'm sure you were kind of thinking, I don't know what you were thinking, but I'm sure you were thinking, okay, this is a pretty good gig. And I'm not 100% sure you thought you could parlay it into what you've parlayed it into. Am I wrong?
No, I definitely did not. I got very lucky, man, in terms of when I joined the show and, the LeBron, like around the LeBron time, and then our show picked up. So when I first got with the show, I was still working at the law firm with you, and I would just 2 or 3 times a week come and sit in, this is when they're still local in Miami, come sit in the corner and just screen calls and log the show. And I didn't ever say anything to anyone. I barely, like Billy, I would just do whatever Billy told me to do. Hey, answer these calls. We're doing caller number 8. So just the 8th caller here, tell them they won tickets to tonight's Heat game. Like those were my big responsibilities. And it was just over time, just like peppering them with, I'm kind of getting into how I got the job. To answer your question, I was just kind of happy to be there. And like we talked about being at that law firm and not really feeling like that's in this space. I'm like, I'm in the corner right now doing nothing, but this feels like a good space for me. So right away, I obviously, like a lot of people would in that spot, very fortunate to just get my foot in the door. But I think the lesson, and I get the whole nepotism thing a lot. Always, I can't go a day on Twitter without somebody tweeting at me about nepotism, because my dad did get me my foot in the door. The relationship with Dan got me in that corner. So, but I would say what got me from being just in that corner to actually someone that they felt they needed around was just, peppering, Mike Ryan and Billy and Dan and Stu with just like creativity and just like, hey, I'm going to throw 20 ideas at you. One of them might turn into a 5-minute conversation on the show, and it's just, I was never gonna, I just threw, and I was a positive attitude. I'd say positive attitude and just throwing enthusiasm at them of like, I want to be funny. I want this show to be funnier because of me. And I would say that's what really made them be like, oh, this kid can do a little bit more than just answer phone calls. He gets the show, essentially.
That's funny you say it like that. He gets the show. I think this is something that we talked about. Actually, I had Rick Gaiman on. You might know him, Chris, from his golf coverage from rickrungood.com.
Yeah.
But one thing that is so great about Rick is that he's super positive. And I brought that up when I talked to him a week ago, is that type of positivity, people want that in the room. And I think that's like, people think, I think people think of themselves generally as positive people. They don't want to think of themselves as negative. But I mean, I think you kind of have to work to be positive to some degree, and you have to kind of create that positive energy. And I really think that type of energy creates like a really good working space. So, I mean, I love that you said that. The other thing I love is the ideas part. Like, instituting ideas, like everybody kind of thinks
and when I say that, none of them ever made air or anything. It was just, it's just more of like, this guy is excited to be here. This guy sees that this is an opportunity where he's just going to shoot his shot. And I'm just like, I don't want to sit in this corner and have them think that like, oh, he's just throwing stuff at us. So it's just, it was really just an eagerness to like, I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to just keep, until you tell me to do something else, I'm just going to just start thinking of stuff that we might do on the show.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, because I think when you get onto a show like Le Batard, you think, well, they've got it all figured out. They don't need my ideas. But the truth is, they're always trying to get better. And that's why I say I give interview advice to people a lot. And they walk into an interview and they make the mistake of talking about how the job can serve them. It's like, no. Whether it's in the interview stage or in the initial hiring phase, it's or post-hiring phase, it's one of those things where like you want to always feel like people think you're contributing, not just receiving a paycheck. So clearly that was one of the things there. But Chris, I got to ask you, because to me, I know this is going to sound weird, and it's going to sound very like opportunistic, because I have Chris Cody on the show. So of course I'm going to say this to Chris, but you feel like the pulse of the show to some degree. And I don't know how else to put this. I feel like you're kind of like the everyman of the show, where everybody that's listening and watching can identify with Chris Cody. And that's not to take anything away from everybody else who has their sort of type of personality. But to me, you're that guy that everybody kind of identifies with. Do you feel that as well?
Well, I some people say that. I do feel that the show is just, it's so not a sports show. So, me and like Stugatz, I think, is the secret sauce of the show. Like I would never try to take that, but I think I've kind of snuggled into this lane of underneath Stugatz, of like, I'm the next guy, of like Dan will sometimes beat up on, and the joke can always go on me. That's like no, like there's a few people we can always put the joke on and they're going to be totally good with it, because they just get, that's how we roll around here. And I've slotted in there right behind Stugatz. I like to think of like, he's my mentor, and I would love to, if I could be the Stugatz on a show one day, like that would be a nice space for me. But yeah, dude, I just think, yeah, that's just like, it's an interesting role. It can be frustrating at times to be like the butt of the joke and stuff, but that's just the secret sauce with our show, is just self-deprecating and goofy. And I can hit those notes I might not be able to, break down all the serious stuff or last night's NBA game, but I'm going to find the funny from it. And I'm going to find the self-deprecating stuff with it,
And I think that's what people enjoy. Do you think you get that? So your mom's name, of course, which my former boss, Erlene Cody, and then of course, Greg. Do you get that from Erlene and Greg? Did you get it from somewhere else? Like I just did Chris, we just recorded a sitcom show with Pat Mayo.
Yeah.
And one of my like testaments to some of the sitcoms I like is that the sitcoms were almost like parental figures to me, in a sense, where not literally, but like they kind of taught me how to talk sometimes, whether it was conscious or not. I just, like we talked about Uncle Phil and the Fresh Prince and shows like that, where we kind of grew up with them and they kind of taught us a thing or two. Do you get everything from your parents, or are there other sources where you got it from?
I think, yeah, I have to say it's my parents. Like it's a running joke, and you will get this more than anyone, because my mom. Because my dad is one of those people that anybody kind of that's around my dad outside of work, it's like, he's funny. That guy's funny. But so is my mom. And my dad will sometimes get the shine as the funny one. So it's been a running joke in our family for years, of my mom like being like, no, I'm funny too. Like you get some of it for like, it's not just from your dad. So, and she is like, I give her shit about like, nah, I don't know, mom. That's not like, but she is funny. And I think, yeah, our family, before I was ever on the show, is definitely, that's why people with me and my dad on our podcast, the Greg Cody Show, there's a lot of dynamic of giving each other shit. And it's just like, this is just how we are. We always are making fun of each other and giving each other a hard time, being sarcastic. So I will give, yeah, like you, there's a lot of shows that I could say were some inspiration, but I got to give, both my parents are funny people, I would say.
They certainly are. So Joe is in the chat, and I know Joe. Joe's a huge fan of the Le Batard Show. And he says, we would do anything for Chris. It's something about, let me make sure I read this comment right. We left ESPN with him. So I'm not going to speak for everybody leaving ESPN with him, but I will say this. That had to have been a seminal moment in your life. Am I wrong?
I was in the New York Post. Yeah, I was on a headline. Yeah, I mean, that was the most, I became, the most quote unquote famous I've ever been. And it was terrifying. And it was, it ended up being, moving, because like the whole crew was like, we ride together, we die together kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It was stressful. Like it was all that you want to talk about a week, like 3 or 4 days. I mean, where do you want to begin? That was a wild few days.
Yeah. So let's begin when you found out, because that's something, maybe this has been talked about on the show. I listen to the show, but sometimes there's blind spots for me. Sometimes I miss it. How did you find out that ESPN was letting you go, and that effectively you were no longer, at least temporarily in your mind, no longer a part of the Le Batard Show?
I got a call, like everybody does when they get laid off, on a Friday afternoon, just from, I won't name names, but just one of like a nice lady that was a suit at ESPN that I had a good relationship with. She was not happy to deliver the news, but it was just, also, this is an important thing I like to clarify. A lot of times people say fired, because like it was nothing performance based. Like it was hey, we're doing a thing. Every department's getting it. You know, maybe that's what they always tell people, but there were a lot of, it was like, it wasn't just our show. There were like ESPN, hundreds of layoffs. So it was kind of just a numbers game. And so I just got a phone call and I was in my bedroom right behind me. And I just kind of laid on the bed and stared up at the ceiling and was just like, okay, this is this great ride that I was just on. I think it might be over. It's time to, this was like around the pandemic time, right? Was it? Or am I before?
It was right. I believe it was right before the pandemic.
Because I just remember I went, oh yeah, because like pandemic happened in March. I believe this happened in November, December. So So it was before the pandemic. But for some reason, it was like that was when everybody was in the stock market. I literally the next day, I think I like started getting my resume ready and I like created a TD Ameritrade account. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna become a stock. Like I just started panicking. But it wasn't, to your other point before, it wasn't very long before I got on the phone with Dan and I was pretty assured like this is not going to stand. Like, so whether if I have to hire you myself, like, don't start sending your resume out yet, kind of thing.
So that's my next question, because the understanding that I have is that Dan didn't know that you were going to get let go by ESPN. So if that's the case, how did he ultimately find out? Was it through you or through your father or through some like press release?
See, no. It was, this is I don't remember exactly. All I know is like within the hour or so, I ended up on a phone call with Mike Ryan and Dan, where they were just both like, this won't stand kind of thing. Like they were either going to go talk to people at ESPN to get it reversed, or Dan was like, I'll bring you on as my assistant. You know what I mean? And we'll just have you be on the show as my assistant the way Allison was. Like, you know, it was very quick where Dan was like, I don't remember whether I called them and was like, hey guys, so this just happened, or whether they got word of it. It definitely happened to me before they knew. Like Dan never knew it was coming. So it was one of those things where I think it might have happened to me. And then they may have reached out to Dan to let him know that they just did it. Or I called him. I don't remember how. I just know within an hour or so, I was on the phone with Dan and he was assuring me that, you know, not to send my resume out. Because and the inboxes were flooded. I had 2 or 3 local radio shows reaching out to me.
Anybody from any competing networks? Because I know guys like Nick Wright are big fans of the Le Batard show. I know you guys have a big relationship there, like those types of shows. Like
I had a few local like people that I know in this market, local radio shows, who were like, if you end up leaving, let me know, and I'm going to talk to our boss and see if we like, you know. So there were no major offers, no Nick Wright, no FS1 offers came flying in right away. I didn't test it though. Like I said, Dan told me very quick not to. If I would have tested it, you know, the market would have been. But there were a few like people like just being like, hey, so let us know if, you know, like there was some, it actually made me feel, it was like, I was like, wow, okay, so there is, it's not totally barren. Like there were instantly a few people who were at least like dipping their toes in. Most people were just reaching out to me and checking on me, which was cool also. Like I'm telling you, hundreds, the retweets and like the DMs and my texts, like it is my only experience of like going quote unquote in our world viral. Like, you know, because everybody in this sports market, you know, anyone who knew our show was going to like reach out. So I had like hundreds of DMs and like I've never experienced anything like that. And not even on my birthday. Like you think you get a lot of texts on your birthday? This is nothing compared to if you're in a public, if you get shamed publicly by ESPN.
That's interesting. I distinctly remember, and by the way, for those of you listening, just so you know, Chris and I are like in the midst of tornadoes and floods and hurricane size.
Is my internet bad? Am I
it's
cutting
pretty
out?
Bad, yeah. But like, I think it's just the general, you know, listen, we are in like the weirdest storm in non-hurricane season that you can possibly, we can hear you, Chris, but it's just,
I'm saying so much good stuff too. This is
it's very good. Oh, believe me, it's still good stuff. We can still hear you for the record.
Sorry.
But as far as the viral part, I thought it was really cool because I think was it not ESPN message boards that completely exploded as a result of the Chris Cody getting let go?
Yeah, there's a few fans of the show. One of them in particular, Mark, that I'm like friendly with, I DM with all the time. He takes credit for starting some post of "We Ride with Chris Cody," or some post started the Reddit people, like the fans. There was definitely so much so that I thought maybe ESPN would just change their mind because like, whoa, this thing backfired, but that didn't really happen. But yeah, dude, like I said, the fan support it blew me away. Like it had me like there were times before I spoke to Dan, I was like in tears and stuff. And I'm like reading all this because remember, it got confusing because Dan wanted to do a thing where he revealed it on the air, but I knew he was gonna like go at ESPN hard. And I started freaking out about my future. I was like, what if I don't end up back on the show? I need to make sure ESPN like I want them to know that I appreciate everything they did for me. Maybe Dan's not happy with them, but like maybe I'm just seeing I look great. That's why I just got rattled right there.
Well, I mean, so obviously the internet connection is fine. Maybe it's just on my end where you look shaky, but according to Ty and Joe, you look perfect. So that's good to know. I didn't mean to cut you off. I got to tell you, I participated in those ESPN message boards. Yeah. I thought it was incredible for two reasons. One is because, wow, like usually when somebody gets let go from a big outfit, you don't really in fact, I can't remember a moment where you heard this type of buzz. And that's a credit to the show, of course, but it's also a credit to you. And I wonder if that was sort of a seminal moment for you in the sense that you have had to live with the idea of, well, Greg Cody's my dad. Mm-hmm. And well, I got my foot in the door because of Greg Cody, but clearly the viral moment that met you when ESPN let you go, that didn't have anything to do with nepotism. Clearly, we're years later and everybody's clamoring for Chris to be back with either ESPN or the Dan Le Batard show. That had to be like a mind shift to you.
Yeah, that's the show, though. That's the fans' relationship with the show. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've been granted this opportunity to be myself on this show, and the fans connect with me, and yes, to answer your question, but I think that they would have had that reaction for almost any of the core members of the show. Yeah, the fact that the point that you're making is I am now accepted in that world. Like I was part of it wasn't like I was the intern in the corner that they're like, if anyone has to go, all right, at least it's him. It was like, no, he's one of us. So that made me feel great, like, and appreciated. And that felt genuine because I don't think Dan and the show would not that they blew it up because of me. Trust me, it was not going well with Dan and ESPN. This is one of those things where it was like a bad marriage. And this was like the final fight in a bad marriage. So like a lot of people say I'm the reason we left ESPN. We were on our way out. Trust me. It wasn't going well, this relationship, but it did make me feel like I am for sure with these dudes, and it made me more loyal to them. So I think it was, definitely obviously a bonding moment for me towards the show. Like I'd do anything for this show now.
And I think it's just representative of, okay, so that the Dan Le Batard sort of nation is, and it's almost a nation. I mean, there's so many people that are such loyalists to you. And for Dan and the show to kind of show that loyalty to one of its own, I think is really representative of what like the show tries to emulate, which is, we're all a big family. We're all going to cover each other. And I think that the Le Batard fans do that just by supporting everything that you all do, whether it's, Moss Miami or just listening to the show or whatever event you guys want to put on. And then for the fans to see that it's reciprocal in really truly inside the family, I think is a really cool thing to have seen.
That's the part it's not that surprising what ESPN did to me. Like, right. Corporations, layoffs, especially since then, it happened even more to all these companies. The thing that sticks out is a host putting his taking money out of his own pocket in the short term and being like, no, this doesn't fly. This is not just he's a producer of mine. This is my guy. And if you don't pay him, I'll pay him out of my own pocket. Like, that's the difference there. I mean, Dan is, he as loyal, obviously, like I just said, no one else has done that. Like there's no one as loyal as Dan. Like there are shows with producers that have been there a while, but this crew, like Dan is like, it's a family for sure.
So let's take a moment to consider, well, what if that hadn't happened? In other words, what if you had gotten let go, but for whatever reason, you weren't able to be rehired? Obviously you would mention like day trading, updating your resume. I'm just curious, like, if you're not in this sphere, what is Chris Cody doing?
I think at the time I was thinking I can go be the Mike Ryan for another show. I could be, hopefully something nationally, but maybe it was, locally or, of a local sports show. I thought that I could be, I don't know, like even now, like I like being in the role of let me spackle with some funny here. Like, let somebody drive and let somebody even maybe be like, I think I could be a good third voice and give a segment what it needs, kind of in that producer / talking on air role. Like that was something that I was definitely, going to look towards doing somewhere. Who knows if that ended up being like, hey, we need you to be a co-host. Like, who knows? Like I would have definitely tried. Now that I'm back into a space where I feel secure, I've been looking for like, all right, I have this security of this job, but it's like, what's something I can test? Like, what's things I can do? I've always script writing has been something that has, intrigued me. I have not taken the crack at it. I've read some books on how to do it. Me and my brother have talked about, because he's taken classes on how to write a script and actually the mechanics of it. So, I've always told my brother that the Cody brothers are going to be the next Coen brothers. So, that's a big lofty goal. And, now with relationships with Adam McKay and Mike Schur, like I always tell Michael now, like, dude, all that's stopping us now is like, if we come up with a genuinely great idea, like I know people now, like, you know what I mean? Like which is a crazy thing to think about, but stand-up comedy has been another lane that I've been, thinking of testing out, going doing a 5-minute set at some sad open mic, just to see what it feels like.
That's a great idea. But, I think you would be, honestly, I think that is like right up your alley as a side gig.
Yeah. And, Brad Williams, look at me, Louie by me, a friend of mine, he's a stand-up comedian, successful stand-up comedian. And he's been like, giving me tips and stuff and giving advice on, how to get your foot in the door. He tells me, since I have like a crappy level of celebrity, he's like, don't tweet out that you're going to be somewhere until you've done it like 30 times.
Yeah.
Or like, he's like, you actually have like if people come to see you now, there's actually going to be a little bit of expectation. So you need to like be terrible at some open mic like 20 times before you ever think about. So I'm a way away from but like you said, I don't really know, man. Like I feel more secure now, so I feel a little safer. But during that time, there was definitely a panic of like, what the hell am I going to do next?
Yeah. And I think as far as the listeners, maybe not the ones that are listening now, but some that may listen later, I think that's the type of panic that can set it. Like, listen, we're in an age where people are just going to be like with AI and all of those things, people are going to be let go. It's just one of those things you're going to have to face. And one thing that I've tried to do with this show, Chris, is, and maybe not this with this particular episode, but try to give people the tools to kind of like pick themselves back up. So I highly encourage people to go back and listen to some of the shows that we've already done, because I think they're really helpful in that very specific regard. But I think Chris alluded to a little bit of it too when he got to the Le Batard show. It wasn't just like, oh, let me find my corner and just like sit here and just be happy I'm here. No. He tried to contribute to the show two ways: with positivity, which is crucially important in my opinion, but also giving the show ideas. That is like the one thing I think you can do to any job you have. Listen, before you get let go, like put a foot forward and be that guy or that girl in the job that's like, hey, I've got an idea. I have an idea to like advance this firm, whatever it is. You're not going to be the first person let go if that's your personality, if that's your attitude, because you're not necessarily just trying to help yourself in that moment. You are trying to help the company at large. I think that's super important.
And it probably sounds to some people super obvious, but like being eager and positive goes a long way over the long haul. Like I think everybody is eager and positive their first 2 or 3 weeks at a new job, but it's like, even if you're faking it, showing up with a good attitude and, being a yes person. Obviously you don't want to get overworked or taken advantage of, but that's just the way, like when it comes to like being an unpaid intern and stuff, like you're going to be frustrated at times. You're going to be overworked. I know, like, I'm not going to say I was ever overworked, but there's just going to be times at the beginning when you're not. Did I lose you for a second? I'm sorry.
No, I'm here.
And there's going to be times at the beginning when you're frustrated, feeling overworked. But if you're in a spot that you feel like there's something here for me, you got to just stick it out. And that's what I did at the beginning, because there were definitely times when I was like, should I keep doing this? Like, I'm just kind of sitting in this corner. And then next thing you know, the show's going to ESPN and they're offering you a bigger role on the show. And it's like, wait, oh, wow, good thing I stuck this out. I almost left a month ago.
Wow, that's amazing. Is that true that you almost left? That is true.
Billy Gill stopped me from, and it's crazy to think now because it makes me seem a little, it was just, I had been doing it for over a year and I was just like, and I was just like, I don't know, 3 days a week now. I don't know if I can. And Billy was just like, just stick it out. Like, LeBron's coming here. I don't remember exactly what he said to me. I just remember Billy hitting me with some version of like, I think you should stick it out a little bit longer. And
Wow.
I did. Yeah. And look at me now.
And for the record, when you were going to leave there, were you just going to go back to Kubicki full time? Like, what was the plan there?
I was coaching high school baseball. That's what I mean. There wasn't like, that's how little, it went from like 0 to 100 in terms of like the Le Batard show just being local. And then all of a sudden they're going to ESPN. Like, I was just thinking that the show was just going to be where it was. Like, it wasn't like we knew, ESPN might be around the corner. It was just like, this show is a popular show in this market. So I was thinking like, unless Billy's like, I'm just sitting here. Like, I don't know. But then when we went to ESPN, there was just like room for like, it could have X amount of producers now instead of just this. So yeah. So it just kind of like the timing, I got really lucky because there was other producers with the Le Batard show before me, and I'm the one that just happened to be there in that corner when ESPN happened. Josh Appel, who like does a football broadcast now and does Marlins PA announcing, used to be an intern. But I can list off like a bunch of interns, and it just happened to be at the time that I was there when, hey, ESPN's here. We have room for more producers now. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I'll take it.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. Okay, before I get you out of here, a couple questions to get to know Chris Cote. This is a weird one. Something people don't know about Chris Cote. Sorry, that's super generic.
Well, I'm like an open book on this. I'm on a Le Batard show, so I'm trying to think of something I haven't told people. What do people?
Or maybe something you've told people on the Le Batard show, but maybe other listeners might not know.
Something people don't know about me. Give me, shoot.
Well, you played baseball at a pretty decent level, right? What position did you play? Were you a pitcher?
No. I was a first baseman late in my career. I started out as a corner outfielder. I played baseball at South Plantation. I could have gone to like some school in New York on like where like they play indoors because it snows during baseball season. It was like one of those things where me and a couple kids on my team had some like really crappy, like in New York, like I would have to like, no big schools were into me.
I got one though. What about a teammate you played with that might have made it to the MLB level? I feel like there's a couple of guys that you played with or were on your team.
Richard Blyer, former Marlin. He actually sent the MLB record last year for balks in an inning, I believe.
Wow.
That's excellent. He now pitched for the Red Sox. He was like my high school teammate and friend. Like he in high school wasn't that good. And then got good and he was good, but he wasn't like MLB prospect good. He was like our ace, but it wasn't. And then he got really good in college, got drafted, worked his way through the minors, and now he's been in the pros for about 7 or 8 years, I'd say. And I got a hit off Matt Latos once.
Oh, yeah, I remember Matt Latos. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this? A podcast do you have time to listen to podcasts? Obviously, you're doing a podcast. You're doing a show. What's a podcast you listen to?
I listen to Howard's. I'm more of like, I'll tune into an interview, like to a podcast that I don't regularly listen to for interviews. Like I'll listen to all the big time comedian podcasts if they have good guests that I like, Two Bears, One Cave, in that realm. Like a lot of those guys, I like. The Howard Stern show is what I kind of listen to. It's like my coffee in the morning. Like I like putting Howard on my drive into work. They're a competition, but I do like the Pardon My Take guys. I like the Shut the Funk Up podcast, which is hosted by my friend Alex Benson. And I listen to Sia Nejad Sports.
Yes.
And all Sia's good golf bets. Now, but honestly, I'm not a big, like there's outside of like the Howard Stern show, there's nothing that I'm like listening to every week.
That reminds me, you have an Instagram sort of like subscription thing going on. I noticed that on your Instagram where, you basically charge like a monthly fee. Yeah. And I'm assuming like the people who subscribe get like a behind the scenes look at Chris Cote. What is it exactly that or is there not an exactly to answer that question? What's behind the paywall, if you will?
We're working on it. We're trying to, I do give people, like, I like to have fun. Like there's nothing groundbreaking happening on here, but it's just, if you like me and my goofiness, it's just a little bit more than I give on my normal Instagram. It's really just, it'll pay off like once or twice a month, like once or twice a month, I'll be doing something really funny with my dad and I'll give you some like access. So you're basically paying cheaper than an expensive cup of coffee can get you multiple videos a week of, just more insight into the level. Sometimes I'm in the studio with Billy and like, it's more, I need to be better about it. Honestly, I should be doing it at least like a couple times a week. I'm probably doing it once a week now. At the beginning I set out, I was like, I'm going to do something every day for these people. So it's really just for fun. Like, I don't want anyone to do it who, is going to complain about it. Like, if you have the income and you like what we do, help me pay my water bill is really all I'm asking for people.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe we can get you a few more subscribers, and then that'll motivate you to do like a couple things a week as opposed to just one. And Joe says to Chris, Joe says to you, you should try the Early Edge, which is the show that I'm on every day. It's a betting show. Does the Le Batard have like a betting thing? I know you guys like pretend that you like bet and stuff, and I know you actually do, but like you don't actually have a betting personality on the Le Batard network, do you?
On our show, well, Tom Haberstroh kind of does stuff for NBA. He dissects like numbers and like, trends and stuff. But to answer your question, I think they're, in the works. There's some gambling show in the works, but there's always shows in the works. So I don't really know.
Well, if you need a guest for that, I'm not asking for anything full time. If you need a guest, I'll hop on. I don't know if you know this, Chris. I am like the hottest guy in the world right now. It's obscene what I'm doing in MLB and in golf specifically.
We don't really like on the Le Batard show. We don't like just do prognosticating that much unless we're like mocking it. Like, we try to have people on who are like bad celebrities to pick football games. So
I get that.
On the main show, I don't see
forget the main show. That's not the genre for the main show.
Trust me. I've pitched you to Stugatz. Like, I have you. Like, I've been. You gotta like. I've thrown your stuff out there, man. Trust me.
I love it. Final question, Chris. Here's the final question. I ask every single guest this: if you could thank 3 people in your life, they don't even have to be people you've met necessarily. Maybe people that inspired you. They don't have to be. They could be dead or alive. 3 people that you'd want to sit here and thank right now for getting you to where you are today, and you cannot include your father and mother, because those are givens. I know you're going to say them. So outside of Erlene and Greg, give me 3 people that you'd like to thank right now for putting you in the position that you're in right now.
Wow. Well, I feel like one of these just has to be Dan. Like, can I just put one for Dan?
Yes.
But in terms of, I feel like you're talking more like inspirational, like someone I never even met, like someone that like I want to be like that person kind of thing.
That's fine. Yeah. However you interpret that. I like the inspirational component of it. So absolutely. It doesn't have to be somebody you know.
I mean, this is weird. I mean, I've never really thought about this, but like I've definitely always had, SNL Will Ferrell is just a huge inspiration just for like the creativity, and like what we do on the Le Batard show is kind of it's improv. It's not improv, but there are times where it feels like improv, and not that SNL is obviously sketch. It's different than improv, but it just, when you said that, the first thing that popped into my mind was Will Ferrell on SNL. So that has to be like, the best part about that question is I've never even thought about that before. So before you asked that question, I didn't even know that was an answer for me, but that is where my mind went of like that laughter.
That's what the question is designed for. Okay. So we got Dan Le Batard. We got Will Ferrell as an inspiration. Who's the third person you'd like to thank for putting you in the position you are today?
Well, this is that you're doing the late Pauliotti, who gave me my first coaching. He was the head coach at South Plantation. He never coached me, but he gave me I was the JV head coach right out of high school, like a couple years out of high school. And that he was so encouraging of me to just, he's like, you could do this. Like, he gave me the head coaching job, a head JV coaching job. And he was just like, own this shit. You got this. And he's no longer with us, but that was another person that like, just, he get out of high school. Because even more so than when I was at Kubicki, I was like kind of just like lost. Like, what am I doing with my life? And other than my parents, he was somebody outside of my parents that was like, you got this, dude. You're smart. Like, you're funny. Like, own this. Like, I know you're young. You might be overwhelmed right now, but just, and that like, I think about his words of encouragement, anytime I'm feeling like I need it.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect answer. And honestly, I think everybody kind of needs that person that can kind of be by their side, not necessarily as a cheerleader, but at least somebody that can encourage you, maybe critically criticize you if needed. And I think those are the type of people that really advance you. So I absolutely love that answer. Love those 3 answers. Chris, I'm going to get you out of here.
Can I, before you get me out of here, can I ask you, because this is when I think of you, I think of, well, this is not what I think of when I think of you, but we mentioned him earlier, and I can't get off this without bringing this up. You do sometimes these, when you're doing your promos for your betting, you'll do the thing where you're at the gym and you'll do like a full court shot, and you'll like come back to the camera like, first try. It can't always be first try.
When I say first try, it's actually first try. So, well, okay, that's not true. So usually I'll do like a couple warm-up shots without the camera rolling. There have been 2 occasions. There's only been 1 occasion where it's actually been on the first try. And there's been another occasion where it's been on the second try.
Yeah.
So
it's impressive, even if it's the 4th try, though. I just like it's just a cool thing that you do. And I just like,
I'm
do you
telling
kick
you,
people out of the gym for that? Because you're always alone in the gym. Do you like always say like, get out of here, people?
Well, so that's the thing. You know how LA Fitness works. There's no time to be in there by yourself. So I set up the camera like super quick, and I try to buy as many minutes as I can. So that's why you kind of know that I'm doing this like super quick and in limited tries, because there've been times I've tried it and then people come into the gym. I break down my camera. I haven't made the shot yet. I'm telling you, I make these so often. It's like kind of, it's dumb. I mean, I can't believe they go in like 2 minutes after I've set up. Can't believe
it. I mean, it's always impressive. I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, dude.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Look at us. Look at us. Who would have thought?
Look at us. 15 years later. 15 years. I mean, I've known you it's actually 16 years technically. And I both can't and can believe where we are today. And it's just a testament, I think, because I think we're where we want to be. And I think it's testament to our positivity more than anything, frankly, and just kind of being, like I said, I think you're the pulse of the Le Batard show. That's not to put anybody else down. I just feel like you are the type of person that resonates with so many people. And it's part of the reason I wanted to have that personality type so people could see it on this particular show. So Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
I'm pretty great.
Hey, you're awesome. You're awesome. Chris, thanks so much for coming on. This has been Sia Nejad Sports. We're going to come at you next week with another awesome guest. So stay tuned.